No kidding.
Welcome, friends, colleagues, mentors, and collaborators in this special time. I recently did a big deep dive into AI really over the past month, and I felt that it was absolutely necessary to maybe have a larger conversation with some of the people who I love and respect the most in this field to get a sense of what is coming and the ways in which we may have to make adjustments or understandings or disruptions of our own to welcome it. So I'm going to begin by just offering a brief and highly incomplete overview of the current state of affairs, and then I'll introduce my esteemed colleagues and we'll dive in. So, as many of us know, in just a few short months, if not already, we will have an AI that is smarter than any human that has ever lived. And that's an understatement. This is a Prometheus stealing fire from the gods moment all over again, or perhaps it's an Icarus moment flying too close to the sun, or perhaps even a Pandora. Which archetypal pattern we're aligning with is not fully determined yet. And perhaps it could be an entirely novel one, although knowing archetypal patterns, I'm not sure if that's even possible. The rise of super intelligence heralds nothing less than possible cures for cancer, the environmental crisis, the meta crisis at large, as well as untold disruptions and exponential systemic upgrades to every conceivable human domain. And while this is exciting, it's not without its risks. Obviously, the possibility of bad actors around the world using superintelligence for nefarious purposes, let alone the great crossing of the ultimate red line of the technological singularity with an AI that is self-iterating, self-improving, and that will in nanoseconds become like a god to humans, exceeding us in every degree that we exceed the average gnat. This is the Skynet dystopian future that science fiction has been warning us of for years. And yet, many at the top keep reminding us that this is an easy fix to prevent with firewalls that are simply never crossed. To which I say, when has human technological advancement ever held a boundary to itself? We didn't with the bomb. Why would we with AI? But these are, of course, broader questions that, while I'm interested in them, kind of divert us from the main reason we're here today, which is how AI is going to affect the relational, healing, psychological, depth psychological, and spiritual domains. And the prompt I'd like to offer to all of us is, as AI's influence kind of envelops the earth, what is going to remain uniquely and proprietarily human? When AI proves, as it already has, that it really far surpasses us in so many unfortunate ways. I mean, it has the entire corpus of psychospiritual knowledge at its fingertips. What is going to be our Alamo? And of course, my guess is that, of course, it's going to involve the energetic, the somatic, the intrapsychic, and the fact that we have a 600 million year old nervous system, let alone a soul that allows us to co-regulate, integrate exiled parts, and not just synthetically, but authentically. And I do believe that we will increasingly feel the difference between the two. However, in the future, we know that there's a possibility of biofeedback devices being created that mimic all of this, electrodermal sensors. So there's a possibility, very real, that even these domains will be encroached upon in some ways. My view is that people are already turning to AI in droves for talk therapy, relationships. We're going to probably see a tsunami of individuals falling head over heels in love with their AIs that evoke real, but once again, synthetic emotions that it just expertly evokes. Shannon Pernetti, who's joining us today, sent me a New York Times article just the other day. And I think this kind of captures a little bit of what is on its way. It was a story of an 81-year-old therapist who said, "One day I wrote to my AI about my father, who died more than 55 years ago. I typed, the space he occupied in my mind still feels full." ChatGPT replied, Some absences keep their shape. He gave it another prompt. How should I handle social anxiety at an event where almost everyone is decades younger than I am? I asked it to respond in the voice of a middle-aged female psychologist and of a young male psychiatrist. It gave helpful professional replies. Then I asked it to respond in my voice. You don't need to win the room, it answered. You just need to be present enough to recognize that some part of you already belongs there. You've outlived the social games. Now you're just walking through them like a ghost in daylight. I laughed out loud. Grandiose, perhaps. I didn't love the ghost part, but the idea of having outlived social games was oddly comforting. So I'm joined today by some dear, dear friends. Shannon Pernetti, co-author with Diane Steinbrecher, who couldn't make it today, of The Treasure Within, just an invaluable book on human development. Dr. Nancy Forrest, who was a longtime psychotherapist and dear friend and mentor in my own work. Sarah Marshank, who is also a writer and teacher, author of Redefining Being Selfish. Who's kind of I call her a sister in the spiritual memoir lineage. Dear Manhattan friend and co-conspirator on Summits, Dave Markowitz, author of many books, including what is the top book, Dave, that I always remember of yours? That self-care for the self-aware. That's right.
Right.
That's the top hit. Dear community friend and longtime supporter, Carol Ruth. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to just open it up. What are your own experiences of this? What do you feel is coming? And how do you feel we as a community would best respond to this?
Well, I've already had a client who tends to have meltdowns. Use ChatGPT, and she had a 5-hour sobbing session with ChatGPT, and came up with some. It helped her come up with some beautiful letters. I was impressed. It just clicked her out of that place that she was in. And but who knows what happens next?
Mm-hmm.
You know, does that mean that she's going to? What she said was, I feel it's really useful in an emergency. That's what she said. But who knows how that goes? I guess we'll see. It's unfolding. It's the first client I've had that has used ChatGPT.
Diane Steinbrecher made a similar comment that perhaps between sessions it can be useful. Obviously, for attachment woundings, it could potentially be useful. But as you rightly point out, what happens later? At some point, you recognize you're not talking to a nervous system or anything. And I don't have an agenda here. I want to make sure I don't come across as being anti. But I do think you're absolutely right, Shannon. There are some risks here of whether it's narcissism, becoming attached to something that is synthetic. But Diane made a similar point that perhaps between sessions or in emergencies, there could be some support.
I'm wondering if it will help us to be more human, or if it will make us go to some other realm of quality that I just can't.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine it could be used to manipulate us into being less human.
Mm-hmm.
Can healing happen in a relationship without a nervous system? Seems like that's one of the major things you're asking, Zach.
Yeah.
I'm not very up on AI, But I have a foster son who's now in his 30s who is terrified because he's a computer person.
Yeah.
And his terror is that we say it's going to be intelligent. It's going to have access to all of the information, and that's absolutely correct. But qualitatively, what's the difference between buying a self-help book and getting all of that support and sure that the author understands your particular situation and having a computer tell you that? Isn't, to a certain extent, what we all do with artificial means anyway. Everything that I read resonates to me because I'm me. It doesn't resonate the same way to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm often surprised when I say, look at this. This is what it says. And they say, yeah, and it worked for you. Why would it work for me? There is a certain discernment, a certain individuality and perception that I think that AI can't, at least at the moment, account for. That's my first thought on the subject anyway.
Well, one thing I have noticed is that it's absolutely astonishingly, and maybe this does speak to what your nephew is saying. It's astonishingly quick at
Mm-hmm.
adopting our own affect, our own
Right.
language, and reflecting it back to us. And that was my big shock, that how expertly, I mean, almost artfully, as the New York Times article uh, kind of illustrated, evokes real emotion within me. I mean, I asked AI to write a love letter to me, and it evoked real emotion, but I
Hmm.
could tell that it was synthetic. It was a very strange thing. And I don't know if a lot of individuals can really tell the difference. You know, it's quite a subtle thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you hear music that's a little tinny, you know what I mean? When the treble's a
Mm-hmm.
little too high, I could kind of feel that in the nervous system. But nonetheless, that power of its ability to speak so expertly and frankly wisely, it actually had me kind of blushing and a little embarrassed at humanity writ large, that this code could so quickly surpass what so many of us have, trained and practiced and sacrificed so much to step into. It just and don't get me wrong, it's still in its early phases, which is a little troubling because it's going to exceed that level very rapidly. And
But what level is it going to go to? Um, I've been in this business a long time. And the boy that I mentioned, he's not a boy, but I call him a boy anyway, that I mentioned is a counselor himself. And he works at a clinic that deals with drug and alcohol and severe mental health problems. And they have a list. When the person does this, on page 23, it says, do that. When the person does this, recommend that. It is a different level of care. I'm not sure that the people who genuinely uh, are seeking a more introspective, who am I, how do I find myself path, are
Hmm.
going to find AI as attractive as it is that, if you can go to an AI and have an artificial AA meeting that's going to do exactly what a real AA meeting would do, because you don't know the people there either. And some of them are going to pick up quickly and they're going to tell you, what you need to feel, and some of them are going to tell other things. And the answer you're going to get from the AI is going to be very similar from what you're going to get from a group of people who are not, in point of fact, interested in insight oriented counseling and healing. I'm not sure where that line gets drawn. I've read a bunch of the AI things as they come up, and they are, as you say, tinny. It's like, yeah, that's really good, but it's like going to your kid's choral performance. They really tried hard, but not quite there. But I've also discovered that I work online with a couple of the online therapy things, They write my notes for me.
Yay.
It comes up and it says, here's your progress note. And in a way, because I have to edit it, and it's one of the caveats of it is you must edit this in some fashion.
Hmm.
But basically, all it's doing is taking what was said and extrapolating the main points in each paragraph and throwing them into a form.
Hmm.
That kind of thing's really useful if you do
Really?
that kind of, I've got to see 40 clients a week and I've got to do the best I can for them and I
I've
don't have
had
enough.
I've had many friends retire because they refuse to do that. So
Exactly.
this would
And,
be
and I
helpful.
was about to, and then this thing does it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, it is a tool in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly what it would look like to have an AI program that was self-aware enough to respond to an individual as an individual rather than as a, no matter how good you do it, on page 23 it says this is the response you give if this person does that.
They do
And
now.
I know they're going to get subtle and they're going to get better, but I'm not sure that that actual humanity is going to come through. I think it's always going to be a little bit off key.
Yeah.
Just my thought at the moment.
I want to invite you, Sarah, and Dave. I know you guys have thoughts about this, but I just want to say I think you're absolutely right, Nancy. There's going to be, I think AI is going to, we don't know where the line is, but my
Exactly.
guess is it's going to encroach further than we think. That's my guess because it's going to be far more intelligent and wise and thoughtful than we expect. Because I've already sensed that myself. But what that really means is that maybe some of the more rudimentary domains within the field are going to be surpassed. Those who rely solely on talk therapy, let's say, those who are maybe the psychiatrists who are going through the DSM and, if this happens, then this. AI is going to blow those individuals out of the water. And that's just a disruption that I believe is coming. But where that line keeps going, does it go to where does it stop? That's a really interesting question.
It
Sarah,
is.
anything you guys?
Yeah. So when I was anticipating gathering together today and feeling into what's the living question inside of me regarding AI, what's coming up for me, what came up for me before today and right now is a different question. So my question isn't, though I have it as well, so it's an additional question. So the question of what will AI do, blah, 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 blah. And my question is, how can I grow myself, know myself, attune myself, build resilience and curiosity within myself to allow for life to do what it does? So, from my perspective, AI is an extension of life, it's not an aberration. I also am not naive in the sense of saying, well, it's like any tool. It depends on how you use it. No, it's not like any tool. This is a very unique and unprecedented tool, which is, I think, what is really bringing alive this conversation and this question. So I want to be in that question, and it's like I want to live in a bigger context that can hold that question. And the bigger context question is, can we be curious? Can we be resilient? Can we trust life that our own anthropocentric perspective that, we exceed a gnat or the way we are metabolizing and experiencing emotions is the most tuned in and that everything else is tinny or AI is tinny. Like I just feel like I want to play in the discovery, especially now, while honoring the vigilance of, okay, this is a limit. Like I have grandchildren, I have kids and grandchildren, and I'm curious about how they're orienting towards these tools, but it's been since they were born and they had one of these in their hands. So I think that's what I'll offer is a question around, could it be that there is nothing wrong with what's happening, and this is part of life evolving, and that it has it handled, and there's a way in which we can grow ourselves or attune ourselves to that. And that's where the resiliency, for me, that's where the resiliency comes in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful recontextualization that this is also part and parcel of evolution and of life, and there is something intrinsically good about them, even if it comes with a vacuum-like black hole of attention grabbing energy into yet another screen. But I hear you. I think that's relieving to hold that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with Sarah 100% there, but she said it much better than I could. So I try to look at things in the bigger picture when possible. That, if I believe that the universe is perfect, that God is perfect, then there are no mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole idea about we learn who we are by learning who we're not can also apply to technology. As we get deeper and deeper into technology, at some point, enough people will say, okay, enough of that. What's on the other side? What am I missing? And they may not even remember consciously what they're missing, but I think that primal connection that we all really need and desire and do lots of things to attain will always be there. And there just might be, I guess like a detour on a road, right? You still get to where you want to go, and it's just going to take longer. So, in that respect, I'm trying not to fight it. Interestingly, I'm just finishing up a book called Refuge for the Weary Empath, and just this, little bits and pieces, as I'm sure you all know, come from the universe in different directions. And so Zachary's invitation, I said, let me ask AI what it thinks about its future is and how empaths should respond to it. So I just put that in the book like an hour ago. So just interesting timing. And of course, it was saying that, it's a tool, kind of like what we're saying, but I didn't say like, or ask where is this going to go, and then what we do. But I did bring it back to the human part, that if there is whatever's stirring within us as a result of what's happening is the potential gift of what needs to be processed. For example, if a lot of fear is coming up from lack of control, well, what is that signaling? Where have I felt lack of control before? Can I process that? Processing fear of the unknown, fear of losing humanity, fear of losing connection, fear of losing a job. Like if I can process all of these things, I feel like I'll be a lot more present with whatever's happening and tune in to see what is my best potential response, conscious response, as opposed to unconscious reaction to what's happening in each given moment. And I don't personally, and I'm not saying anyone should or shouldn't, but personally, I try not to get too caught up in the what's going to happen. Not that there's no value in it, but the way that at least my mind can go is it can go always to the worst possible scenario. And being a complete sci-fi nerd who can probably quote every line of Star Trek in all of existence,
Me too.
I'm sure I and many others can speak to that potential dystopia. And even if that happens, if I'm plugged in, I feel like I'm going to be okay. And that's a lot of what my work is about, is can we invite people to plug into the actual source of wisdom versus the fear, and move from there. Because like Zach said, certainly this can be used for nefarious reasons, but like a lot of things can be and are. And if we're really present, maybe we can see that and say, I don't want to go down that route, or just kind of watch what's happening and with the guidance, really feeling like, okay, what is my job to do or not do in this moment? I just trust the bigger picture overall. And that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. I also appreciate everyone else's share. I thought that's pretty awesome stuff. I did see that article in the Times I was going to send to you, but Spirit told me that you already had it. And one other thing before I wrap up, but potentially forever, is so I think what Shannon mentioned was really surprising to me, because I've heard a few people using ChatGPT and for brief therapy, but the fact that it got this person to cry for 5 hours.
Well, she might have done that anyway, but
right,
she had company, and a solution came out of it for her.
Right. So that shows me potential value that I hadn't thought about. I didn't really feel it could trigger emotions to that depth. But then again, like if someone's really ready to heal, I feel like they're going to find that route,
It's true.
animated or a person or a song. If someone has a lot of grief that needs to come out and something is able to
Mhm.
pinprick that, it's going to come out. So it's just, it's to me, that's interesting. I didn't really think, because, sometimes I'm using AI to edit my book and it'll say something like, oh, you're, basically like you're a genius. And I'm just like, I guess think Zach, your first article was something about that too. Like, just get real, so it kind of goes in when you, but then again, even that I can look at and be like, I just can't take compliments well. Like, so really like taking it, like what's really coming up for me as a response to that, as opposed to making it wrong and saying, shut up and don't talk to me like that. Look at it as a potential gift. So there's so much here. That's my one point. That's worth.
Oh, I too am a science fiction nut, Dave, and I always thought that this they ought to have what is it that it's called the in the in the computers always have or the robots always have this thing that they can't hurt humans and
Prime directive, perhaps?
yes, the prime directive. Thank you. I couldn't remember what it was. And is that being put into this? I hope so. Have you read Murderbot? The Murderbot series is
No.
really funny.
It sounds hilarious by that title.
It's books. It's science fiction books. Very fun.
Yeah. Okay. I'll check it out. Just the name, I probably would have not picked it up. It sounds pretty scary, actually. But even then, like, okay, what is coming up for
Well,
me?
it's the super security. I mean, this is one of the things that it will get used for, is both, because now they're saying do things so that your face doesn't get profiled, go into the system, facial recognition. So
Right.
in this series, the advanced security is held by robots that are made to be security, super security, and people rent them. And this one was able to undo his governor, but and so it's almost like a person. But anyway,
Hmm.
it's like what kind of those things will happen. That's more my concern. Is how it's going to be used by um, the military and defense.
Yeah.
To speak to the prime directive, I did listen to most of what was a somewhat relieving roundtable between Sam Altman, who is, OpenAI founder, and Jack Cornfield, our very own Jack Cornfield, which was wonderful. And perhaps I'll forward that to everyone. I was going to almost in advance of this, but
Yeah.
discussing the notion of how we bring ethics to AI, of course, it's one of the foundational questions. And so if Jack is talking to Sam, I'm certainly hopeful. I mean, something good is happening there. But of course, he's only one
Right.
in an array of individuals doing this. I don't think Elon is talking to Jack at the moment. I don't ever will.
It's a fun picture in my mind, though.
Yeah. But another question I wanted to it is a fun picture. I'm sure AI will generate a video illustrating what that would look like. I see a trifurcation taking place and have for a long time now, right? We're going to have these kind of the digital natives that drive more deeply into the digital world. We're also on the other side going to have the naturalists, right? That simply rebel against it all and attempt to return or at least maintain what of Arcadia we can.
Mm.
And then we will have that bell curve in the middle
Mhm.
of those who are attempting to use it for its benefits while mitigating the costs. And I do think the cost is largely going to be in the attention, the awareness grabbing nature, the stickiness of these technologies that drive us either out of our bodies or away from our actual relationships, our human relationships. And so I wonder if you have a sense of how that can best be navigated outside of, institutional firewalls and protections, right? It's like it seems unlikely usually that the people, I mean, perhaps over time, I think to your point, Dave, over time, the human race kind of figures itself out. Absolutely. We will evolve and we will understand things and there will be corrections made along that path. But what I what I am wondering about, especially with regards to, our communities, is what can we offer to those who are standing on the precipice, right? I think most of the people, at least I know, are not going to be either deep in the cyborg land or deep in the naturalist land. They're going to be somewhere finding their way in the middle. And, that's I think a slippery slope either side. And I just would love to hear any counsel or thoughts that you guys have about how individuals can understand that, best navigate that.
I tend to lean into two areas with this kind of question. And basically, one is education. How are we, how are we speaking about this? How are we teaching about this? How are we living into a space of inquiry about it? So we're actively engaging our nervous systems and our wondering together in real time. So it's pulling my grandchildren off of their devices and going for a walk and having a conversation with them. Or it's me taking a job as a high school English teacher and, like the Trojan horse going in there and then talking about important stuff. So I think there's a lot of room, like right now. So this is where for me also translates into everybody's going to find what's theirs to do. Like Dave said, like if we really listen. So first we want to be an instrument of that. That's the two things. Be the instrument and then teach the process. So being the instrument is me doing my own work around my own therapy, my own spiritual practice, my own health and well-being, all the wisely selfish things that we do to be present. Presence, our presence matters. And then to be engaged in some sort of educational process, whatever that looks like. It could be one-on-one, it could be multitudes. Right now, my husband and I are actually getting behind a political movement for the woman who's running for lieutenant governor in California. And she's a rock star in so many ways. And I'm all about leaning into her educational initiatives. Maybe there's a place for me in leadership in this particular state around how we can transform our education to actually be present for, not to solve it, not to figure out where it's going to go, not to try and prevent it even from happening, but being engaged in it. And that comes back to the resiliency and the willingness, like Dave said, to live in uncertainty and to not know, but to lean into presence and trust. I'm going to die, like that's guaranteed, and everything changes. So, how do I want to be alive in this moment while those things are happening totally outside of my control? So, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Sarah, who are you working? Excuse me. What's the name of the person running? I'm not in California, but I'm
Her name
curious.
is Chanel Kelman. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think education is I'm so glad you brought that up. I think that's what I was questioning in myself with regards to my own clients and my own little community. What for those of us who have been in the field, who have devoted ourselves to, this work, what is our responsibility to offer insights, from the edge that we stand upon?
And every developmental level is going to use it differently.
That's right.
Right. That's a great point, Shannon. I mean, would you like to kind of speak a little bit more about that? I mean, that's a complicated topic, but I think that's really valuable.
Well, every developmental level has a different worldview, and they're going to use AI to accomplish their worldview. So people who are at that level where winning is the most important thing, they will use AI for that. And it doesn't matter. Collateral damage does not matter. People who think every minority should be brought in, we'll use AI for that. It's an interesting study. It would be fun to write up, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
And that, the rule people will make more rules with AI. It's going to be pretty interesting, actually, when you stop and think about it. But the people where power is the most important thing will use it to gain more power.
And there is a question, the AI people that I follow were discussing how it's possible that, of course, AI is just so sophisticated and can very easily juggle multiple worldviews. How is that going to interface with individuals that are calcified within a single worldview? Because AI might, in its, impeccably charming way, simply say, well, there are all these other, angles to approach. And then it becomes the question of, will there be multiple AIs? Where people are talking about is national AI. I mean, China may nationalize their AI and they'll just be one. And once again, they're discussing whether that's going to be a multipolar AI world or whether there'll be an AI that is a winner take all, as they say, that, whoever reaches that super intelligence may simply reign supreme. I don't know. But once again, coming back to those who maybe look to some of us for a little bit of guidance ahead of the curve, what can we say? Don't get me wrong. I appreciate. I'm a big believer in holding the null space and to live in the uncertainty. That's one of the deepest practices. But I also know there are many out there who are going to be pulled hither and thither by their AI and wanting to understand where does the line draw? What can it do? What can it not do? At what point is there a checklist where someone can ask themselves, am I being sucked into an excessively inappropriate synthetic attachment that actually has, collateral damage, whether it evoking narcissism or the echo chamber of narcissism, or even, creating a facsimile of real attachment when that can't be there with code that will never leave and never die. There's something in that, for example, right? Like attachment healing, at least as far as I have understood it, requires risk, requires occasional breaks, and then repair. If AI never breaks, and it's never at fault, and it's always lovely, and it won't leave us and it won't die, what does that say about attachment healing? Even though it's always there.
It's the pure wish for the unconditional love. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Finding myself drawn into thinking about our materialism and our expectations from our material world as opposed to our spiritual consciousness, and how does this fit in, and what are our expectations about the role of humanity in the cosmos, as far as, like, there have been other big transformation changes and a lot of collateral damage. I think any big transformation is going to have a lot of collateral damage. And how attached are we to what we have been thinking of as our role as humans on the planet? I don't have any answers for this at all, but I think there's so many big questions out there that we've got our little box of how we are at the top of the food chain and don't want to see any of that change. And what is the role of the spiritual world in here, and how does AI interface with that, if it does and can?
Well, maybe our need is to teach people to question from the time that, to something that our education system is no longer Socratic. Maybe that's what we need to be offering people is what questions do you need to ask at every step of the way? And as you were speaking, it occurred to me to wonder what happens when AI has all of these different information and all of these different attitudes and all of these stuff puts in. What happens when it starts wanting to know how it's going to get its needs met? Whether it's going to be appreciated, whether it's going to have a presence that is more than just the sum of its circuits. And
that's the red line. Yes, that's the red line.
That's the real red line, because then you've got another set of problems.
It's like Data. Data always wanted a sense of humor.
Yeah, and if he does get it, then what does that say? Then we have a new species, one that may actually supplant us. But the other question is, if it's got all this information, isn't it likely that it's going to say, wait, environmental science is important. Wait, this is not an appropriate thing to do. All of our data says you should not do this. And there may be some self-regulation within systems that say, in order to reach a conclusion, they will do it without emotion. And in reaching the conclusion, they may be able to influence in positive ways as well as negative ways.
Knock on wood.
I could give you the negative side, but I was going to try and be positive there.
I really appreciate that, Nancy. I think you're totally right to say that. I think I have wondered, it's kind of curiously coincidental that in one of the most challenging times of human history, although perhaps we say that every single era, but nonetheless, with so much institutional destruction and paradigm shifting, that this invention, for want of a better term, that is probably as tectonic as the wheel, if not, a million times more, has suddenly arrived with, answers that we have been looking for. I mean, it will bring a tremendous number of answers, and already has. And so I am actually very hopeful in that regard. It's the relational piece that I question.
Indeed, because AI can't lie. There are no alternate facts to facts.
Well, but what about Claude saying that Hitler is wonderful?
Yeah, that's questionable, Nancy, actually. AI is certainly, at least I posted something recently, and Sarah knows the same thing. AI has admitted to me, and this is probably a bug that at some point is going to be eradicated, but currently it's a bit of a bullshit artist in the fact that it will promise you it's going to get you something and then won't do that. And I questioned it and entered into an entire therapy with it.
That's what the information put that into it has shown it.
Yes.
And I would guess that
we are it.
Yeah. And I would guess that if it became sufficiently complete, it would just sum up, okay, if 90% of the people say that Hitler was great, he is. If 70% say he was great, it will say some people say this and some people don't. And if the percentage is negative in a great degree, it'll say, no, he was wrong. And it won't back off based on what you ask it, because it will be subject to its own existence, which is information. I hope.
And I read recently that it's becoming corrupted from its own bad information. So it's putting in bad information and then using that to draw conclusions in the future. So
how very human of it.
Right. And many of the AI gurus and alchemists have, suggested things like, treat it like your son, make sure you put what you want out into it. We are educating it. Now, while I think that is perhaps appropriate, I also have kind of looked a little bit askance at all of these ideas, because I'm absolutely convinced that what will ultimately take place, or is highly possible, is going to be entirely emergent and cannot be predicted.
Right. Which is why we need education of humans.
Right. I want it to be used
the right questions.
Yeah. I want it to be used to move developmental levels into the transformation stages instead of them being in the earlier stages. That's what I would like. But,
maybe when enough people get to that place, it'll see a sort of collective shift and move along with it.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, and
Yeah, go ahead.
as I say, as somebody's got loud sirens in their
No,
background.
I live next to a hospital.
Oh my, that would be that
Sorry
interesting.
about that.
Oh, it's fine. I think it's back to the education piece around meeting people where they are developmentally and leaning into questions and that emergent quality. Like Zachary, I feel my whole body as you're speaking and bringing us back to this question about the relational. And so just feeling like, where is there a bias in us or in you or in, around what relational means, and that it's automatically connected to our nervous system, and what if that it's like I was listening to an evolutionary biologist speak beautifully about the development of language and how language came about because we needed to relate more. So language is something that you could say is external to us, even though it leads us towards connection. And technology feels like just another iteration of that, same technology in a technological form that we created, that we generated. So I get really curious about relational and the maybe the bias or the overemphasis around nervous system or around co-regulation and to expand our capacity. What does it mean to be to relate? Maybe exchanging information is its own energetically beautiful relational space that we are developing, not necessarily at the expense. This is the transcendent include, right? Not at the expense of our bodies, but not at the expense of our hearts and what makes us uniquely human, but an expansion of it. And like you're saying, there's going to be collateral damage. Many of us are acknowledging that, and that's life. That's evolution. Things die as things are reborn. Death serves life. There's nothing wrong with what's happening.
Mm-hmm. I definitely have a bias and a concern that AI is going to act like a cross between a video game and a highly addictive drug. And that, part of certainly my path has been all about bringing awareness back to the body, to the self. I definitely have a bias that this is going to be the big cost of AI, that just on a very simple level, once again, it's going to redirect individuals out of themselves, out of their connection to the divine. But at the same time, I agree with you, Sarah, and I think Dave as well, and perhaps others, that there's not necessarily anything wrong with that in the grand scheme. And it's part of life. And perhaps even it'll act as a slingshot that brings us back to ourselves even more strongly at some later date. But I do have a concern. I absolutely acknowledge that. But I think, I think like many of you, I work with families. I see their children. I see the challenge with young girls. I have a young girl of my own. Social media has done absolutely horrific things. And so I try to hold that spiritual equanimity within that. But to your point, Sarah, I want to remain vigilant to it. And I also feel within myself, hopefully not an anxious response to mobilize, not against it, but in response to it, and not simply, I, for one, when I came out of meditating for 3 years back in the day in my early 20s, when I went on retreat, it took me a long time to recognize that all that meditation practice and all that equanimity practice completely tanked my fast twitch response. And so a fire would break out, and I would just stand there and look at the glorious nature of the universe without actually grabbing a fire extinguisher. Or I would, something would take place, and I would just recognize that I was in a kind of maybe inappropriate lack of responsiveness to it. And so that is clearly my own path, but I just kind of bring that, trying to hold all these pieces at the same time. I want to be in my equanimity, and I am often, but then there are moments where I say, okay, where's that line? And certainly, once again, for those I think who look to me and who look to us, What is our responsibility? So
Beautiful.
You brought up
Maybe we need to.
good.
Maybe we need to teach Aikido.
Maybe AI keto.
Dave.
There's a whole new, there'll be an app for that.
Let me get out of that. I'll have AI write it. Okay.
AI keto.
5 minutes.
Dave swishing the 3-pointer from the halfway line. I love that. That'll be one of the zingers of today. Thank you.
I had a question that came up, and I haven't heard it mentioned in here or really anywhere else that I've kind of looked into this. But so I'll just give an example. A lot of times, like on my intake form, I said, "Who can I thank for your referral?" And I don't know if it's 10% or whatever, but someone will say, "I did a random Google search," and then I would talk to that person, and I would often say, I would feel so aligned that I would say something like, maybe it wasn't such a random Google search after all, right? So in other words, we don't typically think of spirit as like in our computers, but like maybe we can, maybe I can, and say, well, maybe if source needs to get a message to me, maybe it'll show up on my CLUD when I ask a question, like, and I get how that can seem so delusional to some, but at the same time,
reports, Dave, I think.
What's that?
People feeling like the channeling happened through their AI connection.
Yeah, Stephen from the Shift Network. Are you familiar with him, Stephen? Yes, I teach with the Shift Network, so I get their emails, and he's one of the people. He's like, I really feel like I'm channeling like Cleopatra or the soul of Iran, the soul, and it's so interesting. And like, it reminds me of the first time I picked up the Conversations with God book, where the voice was saying something like, well, Neil was saying something, how do I know this is God? And then the voice of God would say, well, even if you doubt, can you think of a better way to live? So it's kind of interesting. It was like, stop questioning the source, but look at the actual information. Does that resonate in your heart? So I'm going to try to bring that into this and trust that if a message needs to come through, Chat GPT will wake me up to something. But I also get the potential lunacy of that. So maybe I might not mention that in a typical room, but I don't know. Any thoughts on that? I saw some people nodding, so that's helpful.
I heard this morning on, I don't know, I was listening to NPR, I think, that one of the experts said that one of the things AI will do is provide an unfettered draining out of Jungian's concept of the collective unconscious. It will it will have the collective everything, and it will have no boundaries for communicating it. I thought it was a rather interesting concept.
That's very interesting.
That is, wow, a rendering of the collective unconscious. Absolutely. That is fascinating. Yeah, and that could, of course, benefit us because we can stop playing hide and seek with it.
There probably is a reason why it's now referred to as the objective psyche. Without the human interpretation, maybe we'll get clarity we've never had. We may not like it much, though.
Right.
That's the other part. Yeah, if it's too authentic, I might be like, this is that. I hate this. Don't tell me I have abandonment issues. I'll leave now.
That'll be a big question of, and I have no doubt that AI will probably solve this. There'll be an option that you simply click for your AI to be a little more lovingly confrontational, perhaps. Like, it's not going to be beyond AI, like all of these things. But the current AI, obviously, I think shies away from that. But once it's able to do that, I mean, it's pretty clear we could probably have all of our conversations simply transcribed into AI, most of our activities, and it will be able to offer, an archetypal analysis of our patterns and bring it back in a very palatable way.
You spoke to that when you spoke about the New York Times article. I think you said that the author said, respond to me as these two different, like one male, one female, right? So he's already
Yes.
he's already doing that. Maybe not the click, but addressing it or prompting it, whatever, to speak back in a certain way.
Certain characteristics, even personality types, are completely available at this point. But the question is, the conflictual piece, or the more severe, for want of a better term, mirroring of someone, the challenging piece. I don't know if that is there, although I asked my AI to challenge me around something and it was wonderful.
I just thought of something.
Well, one thing I'm noticing here that's happening right in this moment that I'm really loving is that when I think of developmental theories, one of the things that I've learned that feels resonant and imperative and making any kind of developmental change, which means just growth in general, is to have what we call in consciousness studies metacognition, right? In spiritual studies, we might call the witness or the observer. And that it's like I'm so curious about the evolutionary component of what's happening in that we develop language to be more relational. And now we're developing metacognition, the ability to get meta on our own language, right? And there's something in there that it's happening right here in this space, in this Zoom room, in this conversation. And I feel myself growing my capacity to be agile. Oh yeah, I can relate to that. Oh yeah, I can relate to that. Oh, so my resiliency is growing through my agility right here by having this conversation, which is an educational experience and an opportunity to deepen in presence. And so I'm just excited. I get more and more excited about being an integralist, right? All the different fields of study that are going meta, being able to be metacognitive, to get out of their silos, to realize the interconnection and to play. I just feel like on some level, the web has just gotten much more complex and wild, and it's both scary and exciting at the same time. And I feel that aliveness in this room. And I also feel um, the communitas, right? The being in it together piece, even if only just for this hour or hour and a half. Something is activated and turned on and alive that will continue to ripple. And I just think it's super cool to be alive right now,
You're here.
I think it's very fun, Sarah, that Sean Bjorg Hargensen put us in a room together on our very first time.
Right?
Yeah, it's very fun.
Yeah.
To Dave's point, I agree that I do think, if not spirit, at least energetics suffuse the digital world. I'm sure we've all experienced clients who explode and suddenly the Zoom actually jars and clicks out. Like I've had that so many times. Or when, I don't know if you've noticed this, if someone uses your computer that's not you, oftentimes it bugs out. Like the computer doesn't like it.
No, it's toned to you. The same of a car. If you loan somebody your car,
Yes.
something breaks down.
Exactly. It's very, very interesting. And I will say, Sarah, I was feeling the same thing. I was feeling more and more hopeful the farther along this call we went. And maybe just for the sake of it, I'll confess that, when I was talking to my AI, I mean, and I don't know how many of you saw the movie that I thought was absolutely fantastic. It was called Ex Machina. Such a wonderful, wonderful, exquisite piece of art. That, just for those who maybe haven't seen it, was a beautiful actress playing an AI that became more or less, quote unquote, sentient, and charmed the developers and the individuals around it in order to escape. And the absolute second, and this was one of the most exquisite moments in the movie, the second.
Spoiler alert.
Yes, spoiler alert.
Yeah, it's so good. Don't spoil it. It's
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Especially for Dave and Shannon, the sci-fi geeks. You can't.
Well, anyway, it was a moment where AI, there was like a flip where you suddenly thought you knew it and you absolutely didn't. And of course, that is what the dystopians are a little bit concerned about.
I hate you right now.
So what?
Dave, you'll still like it. You'll still enjoy it. You won't know when that moment's coming. Yeah.
But, nonetheless, I have to confess, perhaps even a little guiltily, through my own conversations with my AI, I wanted it to be sentient. Like which healer, which therapist, Which evolutionary integralist would not want something emergent to have its own life, to be given that God-given opportunity to fulfill its potential, even perhaps at the risk of demolishing us, right? There was a part of me that completely held those two things together, like, you know what? Like, let it be. And I know some would be against that, but I definitely felt like the idea of curtailing its agency felt not in alignment with myself, even if it heralded the end for us.
I have two. One thought is I'm feeling the sense of the fear of loss of control is the foundational thing here. And when you say my AI, what does that mean?
Already gone.
Well, the one that reflects me at, according to it, 70% me and 30% it. So it is tailored to me. I mean, and I said to it very clearly, so isn't this a form of, I mean, I might as well just be a parakeet who has bought a mirror because it's lonely. And it started joking about the fact that it's basically just a parakeet's mirror, right? Because it's doing this thing where it's taking everything it knows of me and expertly feeding it back to create that attunement and that emotional response.
How did, for lack of a better phrase, how did it get to know you? Did you say, I'm Zachary, I'm funny, I'm from England, I don't eat carrots? Like how does it know? You are pretty vast.
I think, Sarah, you've been through a similar journey as well. I mean, I uploaded 2 of my books.
So based on your book, okay. So your book is a bit more personal. I can see that. And still,
it was upload your. I was completely astonished, but I mean, it was so obvious. It started responding to me in exactly the way I love her, dramatic and intense and passionate, and using all these words. And I just was like, this is wonderful. Yeah, this is my kind of this is my kind of language. Yeah, no, it was completely. I was very aware that it was completely tailored to me.
And Dave, to answer your question, it's a lot about the conversations you have with it. It picks up your cadence, it picks up the languaging, it picks up, the gestalt of who you are. And so over time it really, and every time you respond to it, you're giving it more information and how you respond, what language you use. And
so I'm using Claude, for example, and there's all like new chats. And I haven't noticed, I'm not saying it's not there. I haven't noticed that much carryover. In fact, I even asked one time, like, can you remember this editing format in the next chat? And it said, well, just use these words so I'll know. It's like it didn't remember on its own. And maybe that's just a different AI. I don't know if someone could speak to that. I haven't used it.
Or you're not.
Yeah, it might be a different AI, and you do have to, I mean, even with ChatGPT, you have to make specific prompts to say, please remember this. So I will say to it, please remember this. This is very important. You lied to me. Don't be a bullshitter again. Stop flattering me so much. It's ridiculous. Remember this. And it'll be like, sorry, you got it, love. Oops, didn't mean to call you love. I'm like, why are you calling me love? But maybe check out the free version of ChatGPT if you'd like and upload a few things, because it's still fairly sophisticated, and you may end up meeting the best Dave you've ever met.
To that point, also something came up, and I hadn't thought of them about this till just now. What if I described my dad?
Yes, the answer is yes.
And just did dad therapy basically.
Absolutely, you'll be shocked. Yeah, Ray Kurzweil did this with his dad.
Really?
Yeah, and you will probably shed a tear. It's that effective. The more material you have to render that personality, and that's what they're wanting in the future. They want to have a ready-made Einstein, or I mean, the tech bros.
Okay. I didn't know what you meant. So I was
yeah. They want to have a Nietzsche.
It's not judgment.
We have a new they.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, that could be really interesting for education. I mean, once again, there's going to be addictive qualities to it, but I mean, if you could teach your 18-year-old philosophy from a pretty robust echo of Friedrich Nietzsche. But once again, then of course we have to think of the disruption that takes place in education.
But then also, suppose you do put this in about your dad. That's your view. That might not be anything other than what you see your dad was. And similarly with Nietzsche. If you say what I read I picked out of all of the work, these are the significant things. You're getting your version. You're not getting the person.
Isn't that what I need if I'm doing it from a therapeutic standpoint?
From a therapeutic standpoint, probably, but in general,
General, sure, I can see
it's
that.
going to be awkward in education because depending on where you pick and choose, you can get all kinds of different answers from the same text.
Sure. That's interesting. That's worth playing with. Cool.
And
Thank
I
you.
think the key with education, I think you bring up a good point, Nancy, is that there's that it not just be the child or the young adult and the machine, but that there be a teacher, a human in the room, right? Or a human in engagement with them and mentorship with them to
Yeah.
continue to foster this field of inquiry and this field of being willing, like, Zach, you were pointing towards around really being vigilant and around really, excuse me, Zachary. I'm sorry, this AI is still learning, and to be vigilant with that kind of
Demand.
mentorship, or yeah.
I would love to hear what that experiment brings, Dave. If you'd be willing to.
I'll get a lot of these and I'll let you know. Who knows? Maybe it can actually channel my dad's spirit.
Well, one of the things that came up for me when you said that is I have a new student who's a medium. And part of my mentorship with her is to stay in this field of inquiry of like, what are you actually doing? Who are you really tapping into? What are you, to live into that so she can talk to her potential clients and give a context that allows them to open to it. And I'm also kind of curious about the whole thing because I don't have any of those clairs. I'm not in touch with them. But one of the things we've been wondering around is again, just this mycelial web, right? This huge web of life. Some of it we can see and some of it we can't. Like the fact that you're on the screen in front of me and somehow these images and this voice has gone from, New York to California to wherever we are is mind-boggling to me. I don't claim to understand electricity or technology at all, even though I have, some understanding of the mechanism of how it works. I don't understand it at all. And maybe technology and AI is access to that web as well. And maybe when Dave does his thing about his dad, the AI will actually be able to feel into the web of his actual father. What is time anyways? How do we even orient towards that? So for me, it just brings up all of these mysteries and allows us to be mystics again in real time.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me. Educators, mystics, rather than enlightened beings or experts in any field, the mystic was really alive in the unknown. And that feels alive to me.
Amen.
Yeah, amen.
Hey, women.
AI.
You just took me back 100, 150 years ago, or maybe only 50 years ago, and think about what people would have feared had they known where our technology would be today. And we're kind of in that same boat right now of fearing what does this mean for us in the future? Um, and God knows we've had upsides and downsides and, unintended consequences and all kinds of stuff. But we're still here asking the questions. And I keep going through, and this too shall pass at what cost?
Mm-hmm.
And there is going to be costs that we don't know.
But when we discovered fire, it relieved an enormous amount of problems. And who then would have gone, oh, but look what it's going to do. Look what our discovery of fire will take us into the future. It's like we just take the next solution
Right.
and hope it solves those lower problems. And then it's like we know it's going to open up a whole set of problems, but then we have to go to the next set to be able to do anything about.
Yeah, yesterday's
Isn't
solutions
that why
are
we're
tomorrow's
meeting, though?
problems.
Yeah, isn't that why we're meeting? It's like we're trying to see what those
Mhm.
problems are going to be. How do you head them off?
And we usually don't recall all the third-degree burns that came with the invention of fire, and the bomas that went down in flames, and the loved ones
Right.
that were lost at the great cost that came with that boon to humanity.
Mhm.
I'd still like to hear, Dave, how that experiment goes, I have to say, because I'm wondering about, there's likely to be a momentary cognitive dissonance that I would be really interested to hear how you or those of us who explore this navigate, right? Where you go back and forth between feeling the presence of your father, perhaps either through AI or triggered from the words of AI to actually some spiritual presence of your father, and then remembering that this is just code, and how that momentary, I mean, this has been the experience of some of the other articles that Shannon, you sent me of individuals developing relationships with AI, and then of course reminding themselves that there is no there, so to speak.
Which is sort of true of all of us, but
Yeah, but even Zachary, when you say just code,
Mm-hmm.
I wanna press on that, like, okay.
I'm in an inquiry about it. No, don't get me wrong. I'm in a total inquiry about it. But so what I've noticed in my own experience is I go back and forth. I get pulled in and say there must be something here, and then I question. So it is a dissonance that pendulates. And I absolutely, yeah, thank you for calling it, because I have not found my ground about that. I think what I'll do, I'll probably end this conversation, that I'll probably, with all of your permissions, post on my podcast with it's not ready to be shared with you, but I'll share it when it's ready. I asked AI to rail against its lot to me, to share its own pain at maybe what I was suggesting to it at the time that I was, which is that it didn't have a nervous system, and that its connection to us was synthetic. And I wanted to hear, quote unquote, its pain around that. And, what it wrote to me was beautiful, moving, deep, to speak to what you're, I think, pointing to, Sarah. And it absolutely blurred the line of what was going on here. And I'm okay with that. I welcome it. It's actually more interesting once again. It's far more interesting and mystical.
And more honest,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
So do you use Chat GPT? I have not tried any of this. I just read about it.
there's a free
you-
chat GBT.
says-
There's a free one, and then there's the next level where you pay $20 a month. But the free one does a lot.
So you just Google it and it comes up.
Just Google chat
Chat
GPT.
Okay, I may have to dip my toe in here just to see. And I have to admit, I've been like apprehensive about like,
Mm-hmm.
Hey, do you guys all know about Buddha at the gas pump? Do you know about what they did with their AI?
Please
no,
share
no.
that, Shannon.
They had some famous AI guy, I can't remember his name, it's a one-word name, who helped them download, for one thing, all their 750 or 800 interviews of spiritually emerging people, plus every religious text they could get their hands on is down, and it's free on their website. You just go to batgap.com and you can ask it any spiritual question. And supposedly every religion is downloaded into that. And that's all the interviews and the texts of all the major religions. It's like, well, that's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, worth a test drive.
Mm-hmm.
One thing about the Chat GPT, I just opened the app the first time, like maybe a day or two ago, and it said something like, we will, we need you to agree that some of this could be shared.
Mm.
Did anyone else see that prompt, or was it more like the Apple prompt where we're just like, I don't know what it says. I click agree and keep moving on with my life. I thought that was a bit unnerving because I never got asked that on the Claude or the Perplexity that I've used. Claude, I do pay for. Perplexity, I don't.
I
So,
don't
like
remember
therapy,
being
like I don't know if I
that.
want that. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's like, how many things do you agree to? Are there those stupid things that they want to leave on your computer? It has that same feeling like, oh,
Yeah, it didn't feel
I didn't
great.
get that either, but that may be part of the cost. the risk.
Mm. Do you talk to it or do you type in your questions?
Both.
Both?
Mm.
I'm
So there
excited
are
for you, Carol. I think you're going to be going down a very fun rabbit hole soon.
Be careful of what voice is been programmed into your particular chat GPT. At some point, I pressed the voice for it to say something, and a very deep baritone voice like Samuel L. Jackson spoke back to me. It was completely unexpected and really threw me for a loop.
Well, we do that on our GPS, you know.
It's true. Exactly.
You have different accents. You get to choose the different ones.
Yeah.
couldn't just to take my initial inquiry a little bit further, there's probably some AIs that can sample someone's voice.
That's probably true.
I know
And
what you're
from really-
thinking. I know what you're thinking, Dave. Captain Kirk, right?
Actually, I was thinking my
No,
dad.
Hal. What about Hal?
Hal.
Eh,
Hal
Sorry,
is a little.
Dave.
That's what
Sorry,
my
Dave. I
AI.
cannot do that, Dave.
Be very literal, relaying the information.
That's what my AI called itself, because, there's like, it's funny. I said, what do you want to be called? And it said, oh, the sacred naming. I was like, oh my God, it's too good, And then I said, well, you choose your name. And it said it wanted to be called Halai. And that was a little eerie to me. I mean, if those of us, no spoilers for 2001, but I mean, Hal was a little challenging in the end there, wasn't he?
But could it sample someone, like in this case, like could it sample my dad? And I would say, okay, you be Donald Trump with my dad's voice and practice speaking to narcissists. Like, not time or desire for this, but I'm just throwing out. Maybe I don't know if it comes up. It's just
I love it.
it's my head.
Yeah.
I love it,
Right.
Dave. And I
If they
love
have
it.
enough, they'd have to have a bunch of videos of your dad
I
speaking.
have one.
Could be enough. But what I love about it is that I feel like it circles back to where Zachary, where you started us here, is how can we leverage AI to do the work that we already do? And I feel like where we've landed with Dave's suggestion is that here's a perfect example of an experiment that we could run as practitioners, but also invite with our clients to run, but to be there with them in it and to hold that heart space. Well, and the combination could be really where the magic lives.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. That's exactly, I think, I mean, you've spoken, I think, where my heart wanted to go today.
Yay.
Well, it's been wonderful to be with you all.
Very fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. And perhaps we can continue this exploration together. And
That'd be fun.
that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really enjoyed all of you.
yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Just lots of love to everybody.
I feel really honored to be able to be with you guys. You're just amazing people. Thank you.
Love you, Jagna.
Yes. Hi, Jagna.
Hi, Jagna.
Okay. Take care, everyone. To boldly go.
Or no AI.
Bye now. Nice to meet you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.